From USAID Ethiopia, this is the Values in Action podcast, a podcast on leadership, collaboration, and culture. In every episode, we dive deep into one of our values: lead, engage, grow together, and connect it to what we do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jay Hayes. I am the Organizational Transformation, Learning, and Knowledge Management Advisor to the USAID Mission to Ethiopia and to Djibouti. I am here today with Mr. Scott Hocklander, Director of the USAID Mission. I've asked Scott to introduce the Mission Value Framework. He'll be sharing his views on the Mission Values Framework, what the values are, where they come from, why they're important to him and the rest of us, and how they might apply in each of our work lives. Around the mission, I've seen the four major categories of values: lead, engage, grow together. Now, each of these four categories of values have a subset of four. We're going to hear over the course of the next 12 to 18 months more detail on each of these values. Today, Scott will be introducing the podcast series and what we're trying to do with this series. To get us started, viewers might like to hear a little bit about yourself, Scott. We know you are the mission director, but who is the human behind the title and the role of director? Tell us a little bit about you.
Who am I? No, thank you, Jay. It's great to be part of this initial podcast. Very excited to talk about Lead, Engage, Grow Together. My name is Scott Hocklander. I'm the mission director here at USAID Ethiopia, as well as USAID Djibouti. I have been in country for well over a year now. It's not my first time to Ethiopia. I've had the great honor and pleasure to serve here in the past in different capacities. But really to come back here and be the mission director, in the region with this country, with also Djibouti, is just an extraordinary honor. And then to be able to have this kind of opportunity to talk a little bit about leadership, about our values framework, about the mission and our journey is something I've been looking forward to do.
Thanks for sharing a little bit about your history and how we ended up here today, Scott, talking about the Mission Values Framework. Please tell us a little bit more about the framework and in particular, what inspired development of the Mission Values Framework?
Yeah, so I think leadership is something that really is learned. At least it was in my case. And so as I moved up in the organization and found myself in positions of leadership, I really did some research and was trying to find ways to help me be better. And the easiest thing, of course, is to look at the successes of other great leaders,
Right.
CEOs, etc. And one of the things that I saw often repeated was that they put together values frameworks which helped them lead and help them communicate to their staffs, to their company, to their organizations, like what's important. So over the past several years, I've been putting together, I would say, my sort of personal values framework, the things that I thought were important. And when I came here, I really wanted to implement it. I think the thing that I learned in doing this, and this I think really makes our framework strong, is that it shouldn't just be about me or even about the leader themselves. Certainly, I set the tone, but there's also a lot that came before me in this mission. Lots of ideas, lots of values, lots of principles, and so this really is a combination of what I've learned, but also what this mission's learned. And we were able to bring all these things together in a workshop we had several months ago. And so I think everything is the inspiration at this point. It's a combined project, one that we all own.
Scott, we assume that values are a very important part of organizational health and transformation. In your case, you related how values frameworks helped others lead and help yourselves lead. I'm wondering how the mission values framework might help us at USAID to achieve its important and collective goals.
Well, I think that strategy, programs, all these other things are very important. But if you really don't have the people part of it right, then it's really hard to be successful. I think really working on culture. I think developing values that guide people's engagement with each other, with the outside world, is really really critical in order to get the best out of every person,
Mm.
to get the best out of every team, every office, and the mission as a whole. And knowing the things that are important to us, knowing how we prioritize, knowing how the things that we focus on, for a job that is so difficult, so demanding, so dynamic, so changing. The thing that we can control is our culture.
Mm.
How we engage with one another, what we value, how we work together. All these things are really what enable you, I think, in my experience, to be successful, particularly when the situation is challenging.
Mhm. I really connected with your point about the people being so important, and success really relying on people and the culture, a culture of engagement, getting the best out of people in difficult circumstances, and we certainly face challenging situations at the mission day in and day out. Would you please share with us from the Mission Values Framework one or two of the values that you see personally as your greatest strength? That's the first part. And how does it apply in your day to day work?
So I think when we went through this really fun exercise with the entire mission, we all got to choose what our superpower was, and the thing that I chose initially was really about curiosity, and this was part of the grow theme.
Mm.
Curiosity and the courage to really to continue that curiosity and really take that into what we do day to day. And so for me, I think that's a little bit aspirational superpower, but
Mm.
I'm always curious. That's really what has driven me to be who I am today. I think in a field where you see so much change, and the need to be flexible and to iterate. Curiosity really has to be kind of at the base of all of that. In order to really get to the kinds of thinking, the problem solving solutions that you really need to be effective. So I would say that I think, maybe the thing I should have, and it's more of a learned superpower, not
Mm.
born with,
Mm.
like Superman flying, for example, is really being strategic, setting a vision, and really helping an entire organization reach that vision. I think that's probably the one that I've worked on the most, and the one I try to embody every day.
Thank you for that, Scott. You named two there, very important ones: curiosity and strategy. So your strategic abilities, and the fact that actually you didn't start out necessarily with those as strengths, but you built them over time. Now, on the flip side, some values are no doubt challenging to practice all the time, as they don't come naturally. Which value or values from the Mission Values Framework do you find most difficult to implement, Scott? And how are you attempting to compensate for or otherwise deal with them?
So, I like everyone at the mission. I have the things I'm better at, and the things I work on. I really enjoy the cultural part of things. I really enjoy the internal organizational development. I'm not an expert, but it's something I put a lot of time and effort
Mhm.
into. But that's also very internal, and so that while that communication, that development is important, when we talk about engage, it's also external,
Sure.
and the external is just as important, a part of that. And so for me, I have to remind myself not to spend too much time on or at least an appropriate amount of time on the internal, and still focus on the external. So that means I have to be very intentional about forging these relationships outside the mission, which are important. I have to be intentional in terms of making sure my teams prioritize that, set up the meetings, make sure that they engage and develop the things that are really critical for work that ultimately is outside of the mission. And
Mm.
so that's probably one that I'm always like reminding myself, hey, Scott, you can't, spend all your time in the mission. You have to get out and meet with the people that we really work with.
I find instructive, Scott, you're distinguishing between the internal and the external kind of requirements of the job, and that you have to continually remind yourself to focus on the engagement aspects, the external aspects, and strike that balance.
And I love it when I'm out there in the communities talking with stakeholders, talking and really seeing the work done. That's the best part of it. Some of the other engagements, that involve some difficult conversations. They're part of the job though, and I focus on them and do the best I can.
While I have special opportunity to facilitate this conversation, you, Scott, will take my seat in the upcoming episodes of Values in Action and host your colleagues from the USAID Ethiopia Mission Management Team. As the host of this podcast going forward, what aspirations do you have for it?
Well, I hopefully I can do as good a job as you are sitting in your seat, but
Thank you.
I think the idea, of course, is that the values framework is about our entire mission. It's not just about me. I'm looking forward to hearing different takes and perspectives on the different components and hearing how they see them, why they're important, and maybe most importantly how they've seen them practically applied or to imagine they should be practically applied. I think that's what's going to give the real diversity, and sense of comprehensiveness and unity to this, which it needs to be. And ultimately, it's going to be a lot more interesting than hearing me, talk any more than this one time.
Scott, thank you once again for being here with me today and sharing your views on the Mission Values Framework and introducing the podcast series and what we have yet to come. I look very much forward to seeing those episodes as they roll out over the coming year and a half. Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by the USAID Learning Project. Thanks for tuning in and joining today's conversation as we explore our collective values at USAID Ethiopia. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring what matters most.